Welcome to the latest Instant Reaction podcast then. Rob Staton and Robbie Williams with you. We've got a special guest as well with us tonight. Adam Nathan from the Seahawks UK podcast joins us as well. And we've got an awful lot to get into, so let's get straight into it. A miserable night for the Seahawks. Second in a row, 1-3 since the bye, and the season appears to be crumbling and going in the wrong direction. Robbie, what did you think of it?
Just terrible, man. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, we had an idea that it would happen, but we got out coached again, and I think that's the most frustrating part. Yeah, Russ is trying too hard. He's clearly trying to shoulder the weight and do too much, and there's multiple times where he just didn't look the right way and had DK a couple of times, and just I don't know why I didn't get him the ball and was looking elsewhere, and he seems scattered because he's trying to do it all. And I mean, at the end of the day, we've just got outclassed and outcoached again, and it's super frustrating. I mean, if we go in and just get our butts whooped, then we get our butts whooped. But to get outcoached like this is it's embarrassing.
Adam, what did you make of it then? I think that's fair, isn't it? I mean, they were outcoached. The Seahawks had looked disorganized. They don't really look like they've got an idea what they want to do on offense and defense. Russell Wilson has collapsed. I mean, his MVP hopes are shattered because there's just so much of a weight of expectation on him, isn't there? It's basically, Russell, you've got to go out there and make magic, otherwise the team's going to lose. I think he's feeling that. He's pressing. He's making mistakes. It's not to make excuses for him, but without Russell Wilson playing well, the Seahawks look like a pretty crappy team.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He doesn't need us to make excuses for him, but the way in which he's played in the last few weeks, it's almost like the magnitude of his responsibility has started to show. And, after 5 or 6 weeks, 5 miraculous performances out of 6 or whatever it was, eventually that was not going to last. And, the last few weeks, it does seem to look as if just all the expectation on him with a fairly limited roster outside him is starting to weigh heavy. I mean, it was almost a game of two halves for me emotion-wise. The first half, I think I sent you a message saying I'm not going to be very composed when we do this conversation. But actually, the second half I was watching and I just felt almost pointless watching. I don't know what you guys thought, but I was just watching thinking I'm just waiting for 4 zeros here because nothing of interest is going to happen.
I was thoroughly bored during the second half. In fact, actually, I turned the volume. I watched the games on Game Pass on my laptop. So I turned the volume off during the halftime just so I could watch a bit of Red Zone and just forgot that the second half was starting. And then when I turned it back on, they were actually already, measuring for the fourth down, which was challenged, for the third down that was challenged, and then didn't get that. And it was a very boring second half. I just never felt energized or excited by the Seahawks, Adam. And when you actually watching Red Zone today and seeing a lot of these teams and just sort of having half an eye on it throughout that second half and the first half as well, and seeing teams like Miami, for example, who just look young and fresh and energetic and like they've got a plan and like they know what they want to be and what they're trying to do. And, watching teams like New Orleans come from behind against the Saints, seeing how exciting that Cardinals-Bills game was, with both teams really showing flashes in the way that ended. And then to watch the Seahawks just look old. They don't look organized. They look expensive and slow. They don't look physical. This is a team under Carroll that we grew to sort of love because it was so intense. It had an attitude about it that it would walk into your stadium or play in Seattle and punch you in the mouth. That it was the kind of team that could win in many different ways, whether it was just being more physical or whether it was being particularly skillful as well. That has all gone. They've just become a completely quarterback dependent team. And with him not playing well, they're not good. They look really bad. I mean, at the moment, Robbie, I have to say in these last few games, they look like a team that might struggle to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. They haven't looked good at all. And Russ is going to have to find his magic. And that's the only way we're going to keep winning football games is Russ is going to have to carry the team. And that's asking too much of him to do. I mean, we're over halfway through the season now. He was able to do it for the first 5-6 games. And now all of a sudden it just looks like, things are starting to unravel. Teams have figured out how to get after Russ. They're putting pressure on him. They're making him make poor decisions, and all they have to do is get a lead. Once they get a lead, it feels like it's really hard for us to come back from, because Russ feels like he has to do everything because the defense can't do anything. And then I'll give the defense a little bit of credit today. That second half was super boring. You were right. But they gave them shots. But I mean, I like they had opportunities. The offense had opportunities. But and nowhere in that did I ever feel comfortable like we were going to go down to score. It felt like we were just, nothing was working. Everything was the wrong play call. And overall, we were just out coached. And I'll be honest with you, even though the defense gave us opportunities, and they didn't seem like opportunities, but they did give us opportunities. If something doesn't happen with Ken Norton Jr. or something doesn't get said about this, or some sort of public reaming about this, then I'm going to be super frustrated.
Let me just give you an insight. And so, I'm on the blog right now and I'm looking at the comments that are coming in, and, I have to moderate the comments. So I have to click. I've got a sea of comments from people just shouting abuse at the blog and just being really unhappy, that, it's our fault, apparently, that, we spent a lot of time in the off season talking about, how predictably bad the defense was going to be and how it was going to impact the team. I just cannot believe it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a case, Adam, of people want someone to blame. And right now you can't blame Pete Carroll and you can't call for his head because he just signed a new contract. He's definitely not going anywhere. He's standing by Ken Norton Jr. and there doesn't seem like they're going to make a change there. And people just want someone to vent. They want someone to point a finger at. They want someone to complain about. And I just wonder who that's going to end up being, because I don't think people are going to start looking at Russell Wilson. I guess it's just going to be another week of calling for Ken Norton Jr. to go. But it does feel like something has to give here, Adam. The Seahawks just can't keep doing this year to year. And we've always said there's going to be a base level number of wins that Russell Wilson is going to provide because Russell Wilson is that good. But that's not good enough for this team. They're third in the NFC West. They've won it once in 5 years. Sean McVay's taken Jared Goff to the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan's taken Jimmy Garoppolo to the Super Bowl. They're not getting it done as a front office and as a coaching staff.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, the Seahawks Super Bowl window, which is a silly phrase, is always going to be at least partly open because of the existence of Russell Wilson. But I was thinking earlier in the week, and you look at the makeup of this team, let's call this the Dwayne Brown, the Shaq Griffin, the Chris Carson, the Bobby Wagner team. For me, the amount they put into the Jamal Adams trade, the window for that team is probably this season. Because I think after that, there's so much to rebuild that you're probably going to struggle next year to really have another go. And so, I'm not calling for anyone to be fired, but if you had to blame someone from, 33,000 feet, I'd probably be looking at Schneider today saying, this is his team that he's constructed. He's spent an awful lot in the past and spent an awful lot going forward on constructing a defense to win around this team. And I'm looking at it, and it's funny, you're talking about watching the other teams play on Red Zone this evening. It was almost like watching the Masters with the South Korean golfer's backswing was so slow. I thought I was watching almost like a slow motion replay. And that was like watching Seattle at times compared to the Cardinals and other teams on Red Zone, like just general team speed. It was like I was watching them in fast forward and us in slow motion. And that has me concerned for this year and also next, when there's going to be an awful lot of holes to fill and not a lot of resources to do that with.
Yeah, I am concerned, Robbie. I think that there will be a counter argument made in the wake of this. It'll probably be made on ESPN 710 tomorrow morning when Pete Carroll sits down. That the Seahawks are 6-3 and they're not out of this yet, and they've got a game against the Cardinals coming up on Thursday. But I just cannot watch this team play the way that they have against the Rams, the Bills, and the Cardinals, and think, well, do you know what? If they get to the postseason, they're capable of winning, 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. That they're capable of doing much of anything, really. They just seem shot. They just seem broken, Robbie. They just seem like they're going backwards. And it's not just the defense, which is admittedly terrible. I mean, it's just not good, and it's piled all this pressure on Russell Wilson, and he's not playing well anymore. The offense looks like it did at the end of last season as soon as the running backs get injured. I mean, people say, oh, should they pay Chris Carson off? As soon as Chris Carson gets hurt, it seems like the whole offense collapses. I mean, he without him, look what's happened in the last 3 games. They've just been awful, woeful on offense. Suddenly, he's the one who looks like the bloody MVP because look what happens without him. And like I said, they don't seem to have any attitude, and where's the swagger? Where's the intensity? Where's the, come on, guys, we don't accept, this isn't who we are. We're going to go out there and prove a point. Who's proving a point anywhere on the field? And I thought one thing that was quite concerning, actually, in the second half, Robbie, was DK Metcalf was getting visibly frustrated. He was throwing up his arms. He's actually pointing to his eyes and screaming at Russell Wilson, saying, look for me. He's getting very, very agitated. And I just wonder if there's worse to come yet from this, that this looks like a team that's spiraling out of control.
Yeah, how does he not get the ball? This is something we talked about earlier. He should be targeted early in the game. I don't care if Jalen Ramsey's doing it. Get him a quick screen pass, get him an opportunity, get him in and around. I don't care how you get him the football, but you need to get him the football early on. A minute 30 with left in the third quarter and him getting his first target is very unacceptable. Just it's not something that you don't. Your best wide receiver should not be taken out of the game like that. And Jalen Ramsey is a hell of a corner. I don't care who's guarding him though. You still got to give him an opportunity. And Russ just seemed scared to throw the ball that way. Didn't even look at him. And so yeah, if I was DK, I would have been super pissed too. I didn't understand that. And this is part of that game plan I'm talking about. Getting out coached. How does Schottenheimer not think I need to get DK the ball any way possible early on? Like, I don't care if he's going to catch one pass for a yard. Let's try to get him going and at least let the defense know we're going to give DK a shot at catching the ball and make the defense have to think about it. If you can get two guys try to have to cover DK instead of one, then you're opening up somewhere else. But it was super frustrating to watch the whole game. And I just kept thinking, man, how is Russ not looking his way? I mean, and there was a couple times when Ramsey wasn't guarding him, he had opportunities and he still didn't look his way, which is absolutely absurd.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, even when Ramsey was guarding him, Jalen Ramsey is a superstar cornerback, but I put him more in the Marcus Peters category, of like the show-stopping plays, but will also give you something to work with, as opposed to a lockdown corner like a Patrick Peterson or a Richard Sherman. And I mean, was it Penny Hart drew pass interference from him? Metcalf did burn Ramsey with that one that just went through his fingertips. So there are plays to be made against Jalen Ramsey if you commit to it. And it just felt, all of the aggression that got you out of your seat and excited in the first 6 weeks of the season, it just felt like it was passive, and it was, waiting for the game to open up in front of them, as opposed to, we'll open the game up and, we'll play at our tempo. Everything seemed to be played in Sean McVay's hands today. Pete Carroll punting twice, once, 4th and 10 from the 50, which, people will quibble over that one. But me watching the defense in the first half, I'd say, well, they're going to get 90 yards, so they might as well get, they'll get 50 anyway. It doesn't make a difference to me. And then obviously you've got the sneak that they don't go for in the third quarter, which feels like a real seminal moment. But it just felt like they'd regressed into everything that Seahawks fans hated about the Bevel era for the sake of putting a time on it. Not that I was particularly anti-Bevel, but that kind of generation of losing to Atlanta, losing to Carolina, it just felt like a regression to that era, which I was so hopeful that we got through kind of in October this year.
I also think it's quite hard when a quarterback gets into this kind of this lack of rhythm, this concerning habits that Wilson has started to pick up. So you can see teams are blitzing him, but he's seeing ghosts a lot. He's feeling that pressure. He's edgy in the pocket, isn't he? He's uncomfortable when he doesn't need to be uncomfortable. And the Seahawks don't. I mean, you look at it last week, and when the Bills, for example, faced a blitz, they would have an answer to it for the most part. I mean, they came up with the plays that they needed to take advantage of the blitz. It seems like the Seahawks really struggle with this. They're almost like they're an offense that is built, as much as people want to talk about let Russ cook and all of stuff like this, it feels like they're built to just run the ball and then try and take these deep shots. Now, when you take the running game away, they're basically just taking the deep shots that Wilson's sort of hanging in the pocket, hoping that something will emerge downfield. And there was no greater example of that when he's in the pocket and he's throwing it into triple coverage to Tyler Lockett early in the game, but that throw was never on. So why is he even looking at that and thinking, I'm going to take my chances with that? It feels like he's almost, I've got to score on nearly every play. I've got to find the play that is going to put 6 on the board because I have to. There's no sort of management. There's no real, how are we going to get DK Metcalf the ball, even though he's going to be covered by Jalen Ramsey? How are we going to mask this running game? What is the plan to get around the blitz? It just seems pretty basic, Robbie, and that they don't have the answers on that side of the ball when they need them.
Yeah, it's outcoached again. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. We just flat out got outcoached. I mean, we didn't game plan well at all. You come in right out of the game. It was very predictable. I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt like I could predict almost every single play, run, pass, almost every single time I could predict it. And then on defense, it was the same thing. You know, how do we not get I miss the days when it was like, if it was 3rd and 10, you weren't getting it. I didn't feel like you were going to get a first down. There was just no way. You might pick up 9, but you ain't getting that extra yard. This is a 3rd and 15. I'm like, oh, they're going to get a first down. Because what are we going to do? We're going to blitz 5 and we're going to leave someone wide open in the middle, and they're going to go for 15 yards, or they're going to run a screen pass, and they're going to run, you know, they're going to block guys down the field, and no one's going to get home, and they're going to pick up the first down. And it happened on 3rd and 12. I mean, I don't even know what the stats were. I haven't even looked it up, but I was something like 13 of 17 or 13 of 16 on 3rd downs. That's crazy. We need to get off the field. Just all around outcoached.
Yeah, I'm having a look on the 3rd down. So Rams were 9 of 15 on 3rd down, and they had the 4th down conversion as well. So in sort of 3rd and 4th down, 10 from 16, another 389 total yards conceded. The Rams dominated time of possession, and I don't think the Rams were anything special on offense today, were they? You know, they didn't come up with a kind of, you know, dominating game plan that we've seen them incorporate against the Seahawks in the past, where they've, you know, with ease really put on 30 points. And I think that's the disappointing thing. The only thing that I think, Robbie, is, and Adam, is I don't think Seahawks fans should take away from this. Well, actually, look, the fact that the Seahawks limited the Rams is encouraging for the defense, and this is all on the offense and Russell Wilson. I think that the previous weeks and the way that this team has been built is what is having the impact on Russell Wilson. Again, not to make excuses for him. You cannot watch that stupid interception where he's got, you know, all that space in front of him and he decides to throw it across his body into coverage, and it's a ridiculous interception. It's as bad as any of the ones he threw against Minnesota or Arizona or against Buffalo. It may even be the worst one. In fact, nothing's going to be worse than the one that nearly went for a 100-yard pick six. But that was right up there in terms of bad play from Russell Wilson. No one's going to excuse him from that. But, surely this isn't a coincidence that all of a sudden, you know, the team is built this way, the defense is struggling. We've never seen these numbers of turnovers before from Russell. He's never made this many mistakes or these kind of mistakes in such frequency. And it's, you know, for me, that is the problem. It's like, well, how do you fix that without the defense suddenly becoming a lot better than it is? And I'm not sure that it is going to get particularly better. And look, you know, that they will have some opportunities later in the season against, you know, the Jets and whatever to get wins. 7 teams get in the playoffs. They may well still get in the playoffs. They are 6-3. But what confidence can you have that if they get there, that they're going to make any noise at them? They just don't look like a team that is primed to have any kind of a run. And then, you know, looking ahead, you just sort of anticipate an off season where they've got, like every team, very little to spend. They've invested all of their draft stock for the next 2 years in Jamal Adams, who's a good blitzer, but what else really are the Seahawks getting from him other than the fact that he's a good blitzer? It just doesn't look encouraging. The future looks quite concerning.
I thought they almost sucked the life out of themselves on both sides of the ball with a couple of things. I mean, I saw quite a funny tweet yesterday about the amount of play action that the Rams have been running. And someone said, I'm looking forward to, you know, on Monday, seeing Pete Carroll say, well, we just weren't ready for the play action, in the same way as kind of after the Bills last week. And, you know, the defense did, you know, markedly improve in the second half, but they kind of just sucked the life out of me with the amount of play action in the first few drives that led to a touchdown. I just thought, well, if they're not going to stop them now, like I almost lost that pre-match excitement that you have, like, what can we do? What am I going to see? And to see them just get gashed on play action early on, I thought was a bit of a gut punch. And secondly, I don't know what you thought about the decision to start and basically dominate the run game with Alex Collins versus DJ Dallas. And I thought Dallas was okay last week. And again, just playing Collins to me was a bit like, it was such a safe move, and it was such a safe 3.8 yards per carry that you were going to get. Admittedly, he did have, you know, a decent run for the touchdown, but it was just more passive. And I guess, Robbie, it links to what you're saying about the coaching, that, There wasn't anything exciting about what they did. They didn't thrill us with anything, and it just kind of sucked the life out of me fairly early on, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Adam Collins, with Alex Collins, it was kind of like, well, if we just get him to do sort of the typical Seahawks running back role, then we can do all of our shots downfield and we can play this kind of offense that we want to. But for me, with Carson out, with Hyde out, you've got to adjust. You've got to come up with some different ideas. You've got to work out a scheme and a game plan. And part of the issue is that, I've just watched the Jaguars with a 7th round rookie quarterback go and play Green Bay and push them right to the brink and keep Aaron Rodgers in check and come up with ways to score points and trouble them. You watch, all right, the Niners got comprehensively beaten for the most part today, but they put up a fight against the Saints, with like 20, like almost like a full 22 on injured reserve. You watch the way that coaches are able to elevate their players and put together a crisp game plan that makes them competitive and interesting. And I just don't feel the Seahawks are doing that. I mean, they're not. Who is elevating, apart from perhaps Poona Ford, who has elevated their play and really stepped up to the plate? And that part of that's on the players themselves. Part of it is on the coaching staff to get a bit more. And part of it is the way that you build the team in the first place, which, we all voiced concerns about that, or a lot of us did during the off-season, Robbie. I mean, Robbie, are you enjoying this season? Are you actually watching this Seahawks team and taking some actual enjoyment from what you are seeing right now? And is there anything worse than having no hope? Because quite frankly, at the minute, I don't really feel like I've got hope. I feel like I'm going to watch a game on Thursday night that'll keep me up till 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't feel like there's much of a chance that they will win that game now, given the way the season's going. But even if they do, I don't think I will come away from that Arizona game, even if they win, thinking they're back on track at 7-3. I'll just think whenever they play a proper team in the playoffs, what we saw today or what we saw last week will come to the fore again.
I mean, early in the season, I was excited. I was very much enjoying it. Even when it was close, I enjoyed seeing our offense come to life. And, I knew it was frustrating with the defense, but man, Russell was playing so good. Yeah, I was definitely enjoying seeing it. The last couple of games, though, no. I mean, I'm starting to get like a little defeated, and it's super annoying. And you want to see him come out and just game plan better. I mean, that's all I really want to see. I mean, come out and try something new. Like, I mean, there's a point where I know Pizza was like, you trust the process and all this kind of thing, but there's at some point where the process is broken and you've got to try something new and you've got to throw something different at a team and make them question what you're going to do. Everybody knows what we're going to do. It's not hard to figure out, and it's not hard to attack. And that's why we're losing now. And they figured out the recipe to stopping Russ. And now that they've done that, we're in trouble. I'm really worried about this Thursday night football game. And I'm going to say one more thing. Who stepped up to the plate today? Jason Myers. That's about the only thing I can take up. A 61-yard field goal. Way to go, man. That's the only thing I got excited about.
Yeah, well done to Jason Myers. Congratulations. You're right, Robbie. He played well. I think, Adam, this reminds me a bit of 2017, sort of the end of the season there. But the thing about the 2017 season was that you felt like Russell Wilson was 3 years younger. So he was probably like his mid to late 20s still. You knew that a reset was kind of coming, and there was something to be excited about with that. There was going to be some changes, and the team was going to have a new look. And when you're going to get into that process, it can be quite exciting. What's the new team going to look like? Who are the new stars that are going to emerge? Especially when you think all of a sudden there's a chance that, the next Richard Sherman will be found, or the next Cam Chancellor, or the next Marshawn Lynch. And you kind of wonder, how is this all going to unfold? And for parts, the 2018 season was a lot more exciting than 2017 or 2016, because it felt like we were watching a new group come together. There was that connection that was happening there. And although that season finished in quite disappointing fashion in Dallas, it felt like there was maybe the green shoots of something. I just feel like that's all gone now. And then when I look to the off-season, I think, well, what can they actually do? Unlike in 2017, going into the off-season there, they could move other players on. They could cut players. They could refresh. They could do a lot of things. They had a first-round pick. I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, if this season carries on at this rate, what are we going to have to look forward to?
Well, I won't forget that at the end of, after the Green Bay game last year, that a number of players, Wilson included, and I don't think they were just saying this to kind of pay lip service. They said it genuinely felt like after the Falcons loss in 2012, and we were going to build on that and go into the following season with all this hope and all this talent. And I do think that my sporting fandom is predicated on the fact that my main sports team just causes me pain all the time. And so I look at sports fandom through that prism of, I don't know what's coming around the corner. But even with that, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see, the amount of talent in this team compared to 2012. Obviously, you still had Wilson playing at an elite level, but it didn't seem right. But we did have the 50 million cap room going into the summer, so maybe there's something you can do with that. But that started getting frittered away, and Rob, you highlighted that fairly well during the off season of where's this money going? It's not really, what have we got to show for it? And then you've got the draft, which Jordan Brooks looks like a decent pick. Was he worth a first rounder? That'll be, we'll find out in the future. Then you give up all what you did for Jamal Adams, and so it's all gone into this. So the worry for me is that if it didn't happen in 2013, it probably put the foundations in that it may well have happened. Well, it nearly did in 2014 as well. The worry for me is that if this is supposed to be 2013, God knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years, because I just don't see where the next rebuild is going to come from. I don't see where the resources are.
I'm very aware that in the background, as you were speaking there, Adam, the TV is on and they were showing the Arsenal losing 8-2 at Old Trafford, and then a hapless Arsene Wenger came out to do his press conference afterwards. And I'm starting to feel a little bit like this is the arse end of the Arsene Wenger era at Arsenal a little bit, where, pretty soon you're going to have this sort of legendary coach where the fans turn and it's going to get really, really uncomfortably ugly at the end, where you don't want people to be calling for his head all the time and calling for change, and it goes sour. You kind of think there needs to be a graceful parting at some point, and it maybe is best for everybody. And I hate to sort of talk this way, but when you're just watching a performance like that, and you're looking at the body language as well. I mean, Russell Wilson's body language, not surprisingly given the way that he played, he just didn't look like Russell Wilson at the end. He didn't look like he believed that they were going to get back into this game. And Carroll just looked deflated on the sideline. He suddenly started to look a bit like his age, and doesn't look particularly like the Carroll that we've come to expect in Seattle. So let me just ask both of you this question. Do you believe in Pete Carroll? Do you still see Pete Carroll? I mean, he's going to be here, whichever way you answer this. But is Pete Carroll the right man to lead this franchise?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think so. I want to believe that he is. I have a hard time pinning it strictly on Pete. I think Pete just needs to let go of some of the responsibilities. Maybe not being so in charge of decision making. Maybe I don't know how much John Snyder actually has a say in some of the things. I know Pete Carroll is the president of football operations. I know he has a lot of say in everything. So maybe he needs to release some of that control and give it to some other people. I would love to see a little more creativity on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, if we're going to keep Jamal Adams around, then we need to build around him, go get some players that we can, and we need to blow this defense up. It's just not good. So go out, blow this defense up, get a defensive coordinator in that's young-minded, hungry, that knows how to use Jamal Adams in a way that we can, justify spending the 2 first rounds and a third on him and a player. So there's some things that need to happen, and I believe Pete can do it. It's just the thing that I don't trust about Pete is that I just don't think he's going to. I think he's so loyal to his players, to his coaches, that he's just not willing to make those kind of changes.
I saw an article earlier that said it was about Dan Quinn, and it said, Dan Quinn, may well go back to Seattle. They might go after Gus Bradley. And I thought, no, this is part of the problem. If you move Ken Norton Jr. on and just go back to the old 2 guys who run the same scheme, who are very friendly with Pete Carroll, this feels like you're not really fixing anything there. And Atlanta's defense was horrible as well. It's like the second worst one in the league behind Seattle, and Gus Bradley in LA are struggling on defense as well. So that to me doesn't seem like an answer anyway. Adam, what do you think about Pete?
I mean, I've been using the Pete Carroll Arsene Wenger comparison for about 4 years now, but I do find it quite difficult to apportion blame to the point where one person needs to go. I mean, ultimately, do I think Pete Carroll has the ability to win the Seahawks another Super Bowl? Yes, I do. I don't think he's so outdated in his methodology that, well, this, just cannot work. He's not a curmudgeon, like, you do see in some coaches. But if he is going to win again, he will need to shift a mindset in some capacity. The defense, the cover three that is just all the time. We have become predictable on both offense and defense, but he is a guy who has been able to rejuvenate and revitalize his own career on a number of occasions by assessing what he's doing. He writes about it in great depth, what he's doing and changes he had to make and what he's learned. If he's learning from these things, then I would say, yeah, this can work. If he's not learning, and I think we'll probably see that maybe in 12 months' time, we can have a real look at it and saying, well, what's changed in a year? I think that's probably will be the best time to know. I mean, what he had almost like a Michael Corleone Godfather-esque purge of his entire staff a couple of years ago. I'll leave it to you guys. I mean, do you think we're necessarily better off for the wholesale changes that were made? And if not, is it time to maybe do that again as a last hurrah and see what happens there? I mean, people are talking about Brian Schottenheimer as a potential head coach. I'm not quite sure I see that, to be honest. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, no, I mean, it's certainly not. And I think any hopes of that have gone by the wayside with Russell Wilson's MVP hopes, because they've just not had any answers for the last sort of couple of weeks. And in the second half of the Arizona game, I mean, they scored 7 points. Whereas if they'd just got another field goal, they would have won that game. So it's become a real issue. I think the problem with the coaching staff is it's just so thoroughly unspectacular, isn't it? It's a bunch of sort of younger guys that they're given a chance to. Carroll's old friends from USC, Carroll's family members. And to me, it needs to sort of be completely shaken up in the offseason to sort of restore some faith and belief. And that, to me, means getting an outsider in to run the defense. Not somebody who is from the Carroll tree. Doesn't mean they have to be like a 3-4 defensive coach as opposed to a 4-3. It can still be somebody who is familiar with the concepts that Carroll runs, but it needs to be an experienced coach from the outside who Carroll just goes, you go away and run the defense. I'm going to run the culture. I'm going to be the figurehead. I'm going to be the leader. You go away and run the defense. And then he needs to build the staff around that. His positional coaches need to be experienced, and it needs to just shake everything up and give the whole roster a shake, because it's a development program is how Carroll will describe this team, and players are just not being developed. Where are we seeing sort of these guys who they've drafted really take a big step forward, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3? Who are the players that they've drafted aside from DK Metcalf in recent years that have gone on to become real quality starters that, anybody in the league would really want? I mean, they've increasingly just year after year become a team that is dependent on the quarterback, which has never really been Carroll's philosophy. It's to create a complete circle. That's what he wants to do, and that has gone.
I mean, there are players that we've drafted that have gone other than DK, I think. I mean, you could say Carson or any of those guys. There's players that teams want, but we've just missed too many times on the high-end targets, like on the first-round draft pick. And I think that's where it really gets frustrating when you expect those guys to produce, right out the gate. And, we've just had miss after miss after miss. And that's where it's, I think it starts to tilt it a little bit. You start to see the down spiral when that happens, and you're relying on guys, 7th round, running back to lead the team. And it's really frustrating to see the miss after miss. And I think that's why they're okay giving up their first round picks, for players like Percy and Jimmy or whatever. They haven't used them well. So they just feel like if we can go get a bona fide superstar already, like Jamal Adams is 24 years old, he still has 1 more year on this contract. I don't know if he's going to want to come in and play on his rookie deal, or if he's going to demand more money after the season. But I think that's why they're okay giving up their first, because they just missed so much. It's also why they're willing to trade down so many times. That they've missed so many targets that we've talked about many times. I mean, how great would TJ Watt look right now on this roster? I mean, there's so many guys that you just, man, if you would have just drafted this guy, how much better would we be? And it's it's becoming increasingly frustrating to go year after year, miss after miss. And, and as far as this game goes, I mean, I don't know if I don't know if Russ is in the right mindset right now. Like, these last 2 games have just been not great. And I know he's trying to take the world on his shoulders and lead this team, but he just looks off. And I don't know if the MVP talk is getting to him or all that, if it just feels like he needs to try too much, but he needs to take a lot of responsibility for this game. And I can't wait to see his press conference, because I hope he shoulders some of this blame, because he played like just there, like you said, that roll into that right. He had 20, 30 yards to run, and coming across his body throwing into that was just terrible, and a terrible decision. And he's taken too many sacks, especially at the end of the game when you're trying to, get the ball, down the field and get out of bounds quickly and stop the clock. And he's just, we have to use our timeout because he just, not making the right reads or whatever the decision. So yeah, it's just really frustrating. With DK Metcalf, man, if I was him, I'd just be livid. He's having a great season. He's clearly a top wide receiver in this league. You need to do more to get him the ball right out the gate.
Apologies to anybody that is maybe coming in expecting a thorough review of the Rams game, and as just feels like I've just spent the whole time talking about the long term and stuff like that. I suppose the reason why that is, and Robbie was right to bring it back to the game, and just a final point on sort of the longer term. For me, it just feels like, well, there's almost like an inevitability now, like a predictability of what is going to come, and that's kind of why I'm like looking ahead. I just had a thought that, so you look at the Cardinals, and so Cliff Kingsbury comes in, and they're picking first overall. And yeah, you know what? They nail the first pick and they get Kyler Murray. And look how he's elevating that team, and he's exciting and he's brilliant and he's quality. And they're 6-3, like the Seahawks are. But it feels like a different 6-3. It feels like a team that's on the up and on the rise. And within, it's taken them a season and a half to get into a position where they could realistically win the NFC West, having gone from being the worst team in the NFL, and then in a season and a half, they could be winning the division and could be a threat in the postseason. You look at the Rams, Sean McVay takes over a team that was on its backside, that for years under Jeff Fisher was going 8-8 and wasn't going anywhere. Jared Goff didn't look particularly good to start his career. McVay comes in. They're in the Super Bowl. They're in the playoff mix again this year. They could win the NFC West again this year. You look at Kyle Shanahan. He comes in. He takes over a bad San Francisco 49ers team that went through Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, and they pick in high in the draft. And yeah, do you know what? It takes him a couple of years, but then they're in the Super Bowl. And when I look at the Seahawks, they didn't need to pick in the top 5 to get their quarterback, because they already had a fantastic starting quarterback. Now they've made the investment to try and get a top 10 player in Jamal Adams, and it's cost them a great deal. They've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of draft picks this year as well. Why can the other 3 coaches in this division raise their teams and build and grow, and why can't the Seahawks?
I think it's, we didn't talk before the show about, we'll talk about the game, but we'll look at it, the bigger issues facing the team. But I think it naturally goes into that, because so many of the things that you saw happen on the field today are probably byproducts of longer term issues that the team is going to face. Ultimately a lack of talent in some areas, too many holes in other areas, big players that you need performances from, not really doing it, money that you spent. Greg Olsen, $7 million. We've talked about that on a number of occasions, Rob. That money kind of, just where is that money going? And I think you're right. There is this view amongst a lot of Seahawk fans, and I don't blame them. I mean, Pete Carroll, maybe one of the greatest coach in the city's sporting history, and so it does feel almost blasphemous to suggest that things could possibly be okay without him. But again, people probably have taken that too far, to the point where they think, well, if he goes, you're 0-16 for the rest of time. I mean, ultimately, it's a crapshoot in all sport. When you change your coach, it might work, it might not, and it's very difficult, really, to guarantee either way. That's why so few teams have long-term success over a number of coaches. But I think you're right in the sense that we shouldn't look at it and think, well, if we make a change like that, it's disaster forever. Because if there's any sport that sets you up to make changes and win quickly, it is the NFL.
Yeah, and let me make it clear that I'm not saying fire Pete Carroll or anything on this podcast tonight. I think that when you look at this team and you look at the way it's performing, and you look at the defense, the offense, the attitude, the energy, the lack of it, the direction that the team's going, the fact that they're 1-3, the amount that they've spent this year, I think it's unavoidable that you end up sort of looking, where are the Seahawks going? And you need to sort of ask that question. And it's a fair question to ask. And there's always going to be people who say, well, they're 6-3, and well, they've still got time to turn it around. That'll always happen. And look, there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. If you choose to be positive and to think positively and just tune out and go, do you know what? I'm just going to hope for the best and hope that the Seahawks can turn this around, that something can spark in the next few weeks. And look, I think the Patriots went to a Super Bowl off the back of like a 40-odd point to 10 hammering in Kansas City. And that was the game when Bill Belichick came out afterwards and said, on to Cincinnati, and did all of that. I don't know. I just don't have any real confidence that the Seahawks are going to have that moment. That I've not listened to Pete's press conference, that he's going to come out steely-eyed, determined, and say on to Arizona, and that you're going to have the fix here. And I just think there's a bit. Robbie, we've talked about this, in the past. I just think there's a real drifting feel and a lack of accountability. The team is in an ownership flux. There isn't really a proper ownership structure within the team to hold people to account. And that won't be there until the team is sold. Jason Lacanfora reported at the start of the season, it's probably going to take at least 3 years for that to happen. That probably chimes in with Carroll's contract extension. This is going to be the status quo for the next 5 years. If, there's not going to be a change to the football operations unless Pete Carroll retires. So it's going to be this way, but I just don't think there's enough challenge. There's enough questioning. There's enough pressure from above, and it doesn't really come from anywhere else. I mean, Pete gets a pretty easy ride with the media in Seattle as well, and that's not going to change either, probably.
Yeah, I'll just back up real fast. I'm one of those guys that typically debate like, well, we are 6-3, we still have a shot. And I've been saying it a long time. As long as we get in the playoffs, you never know. Anything can happen as soon as you get in the playoffs. So you're right. My confidence is waving a little bit on that, and it's hard to sit here and justify the fact that we have an opportunity to still go out and win the division. And this game on Thursday, you said something earlier though in the podcast, Rob, where you're like, even if they win, I don't know how confident I'd be. I would disagree with that on the simple fact that it determines, or it matters how they go out and win. If they go out and dominate Arizona and they come up with a game plan and they shut down Kyler Murray and they only put up 10 points or something like that, and then we come back out and score 40 and it's a total butt whooping, then my confidence will be up there again. I'll be like, okay, we're back. All right. Like we finally started to figure something out. So it really matters on how they win. If it's one of those games like it was this last time and went to overtime and, we win because they missed a field goal, then yeah, my confidence probably will not be as high. But back to your original thing, I don't even know if Pete Carroll would be challenged right now if Paul Allen was still around. I think that he trusts Pete that much, and he gave Pete this much control to do it. And I'm not saying Paul wouldn't say something. I'm not saying Paul wouldn't be like, hey, like, what's going on? We need to fix this. But I think he'd give him a little bit of leverage, a little bit of leeway. And now after the season, maybe he'd tell him to say something else. But it's tough to say right now how that's going to go. But you're right. I mean, the ownership is in flux. I mean, no one really knows what's going on. They did give him a new 5-year extension. This is what we're working with and what we're going to deal with. And I love Pete. Like I will fully admit, when Pete Carroll first got hired, I absolutely hated the hire and thought it was the worst decision. But he proved me wrong. And he was one of those guys. He came in, made like 180 moves in the first 2 seasons or something like that. And just like, they can do that again, and it's going to be tough. But I mean, I think they can rebuild this defense. I mean, one of the things they spent money on this offseason was, players like, Brandon Shell or, guys like to help the offensive line. And I feel like the offensive line has been playing pretty well. They definitely missed on the dude we just traded. I don't even care what his name is anymore. It doesn't matter. We got rid of him.
How can you forget BJ Finney?
Finney, all right, that's fine. I was like, once he's gone, he's gone. I don't care. BJ Finney, once we get rid of him and his, $8 million mistake, whatever, we're going to make mistakes in free agency. I understand that. And the fact that he was one of the first guys that they signed maybe a little frustrating, but how do you miss Jermaine Ifedi at all? I mean, Brandon Shell is playing pretty well, and I don't miss the drive killer of getting a big play down the field and having to be a holding call because Ifedi was doing something he shouldn't or got in a scuffle after the play or whatever. So I mean, there are positives going forward, but we need to blow this defense up.
Yeah, I just think I don't know. It's funny. Like today was kind of a weird one as well, because it kind of felt like in all the red zone games, all the players that you talk about over the years were kind of stepping up and then making the plays, and you kind of start to think what could have been, and then you start to think I've just overthought this so much. The drafting of a linebacker in the first round, and not having Nick Chubb and having Rashard Penny instead, because Rashard Penny had been, in their words, he'd got the highest injury grade they'd ever had, and yet he spent most of his time injured in Seattle. And Nick Chubb looks absolutely fantastic, and all the little things like that. I don't know. Adam, have you got a thought before we wrap up and have one final question with each of you?
Well, look, I mean, there's going to be a number of people, I hope, watching that are saying, well, you guys are being ridiculous. You're down Shaq Griffin today. You're down Quinton Dunbar. You're starting secondary, who you thought were going to, lead the team back to, if not LOB days, a level of a dominance in the back end that you hadn't seen for a long time. I think they've played 3 quarters of football together, the 4 of them. Carlos Dunlap is just there. Jaron Reed looks like he's improving. Poona Ford came back today. Benson Mayowa, you're missing your starting centre. You're missing both your 2 running backs. And it honestly wouldn't stun me if, when everyone came back, they did launch a challenge. When they were 7 points down against Buffalo last week, I texted, all of my, American football groups saying, put the house on Seattle winning this, because it just felt like such a game where, they pull it back from the jaws of, the jaws of defeat. So there is still part of me, it's just been a doom and gloom hour, let's be honest with ourselves, talking about what may happen. It wouldn't stun me if they turned it around, and it may not start on Thursday, because I don't think the health of the team is going to be there. And I said to Mike Dugai this week, if you can get me to the dance fully healthy, I'd take that. I don't really care about the seeding, because I feel if we can be fully healthy going into it, then we're there. So maybe there is still a hope. But is there any party? I think, Robbie, you're nodding probably slightly more than Rob is on this. Is there part of you that thinks that well, maybe there's still a glimmer in this team to get to the goals where we thought they might reach at the start of the year?
Well, Adam, I'll just say I appreciate that, man, because this has been a gloom hour. But yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like I really, and it's hard to remember sometimes how many injuries we have, right? I mean, we do have a lot of injuries, but I mean, you can say the same thing about San Francisco, and they're competitive, right? They're coming out and they're playing. They're not winning, but they're playing competitive, and they're making changes and they're adjusting. And I think that's kind of what I would like to see, is just some changes and adjusting. And then you can start justifying, well, we're losing because we have the injuries. But I like what you're saying. Get to the dance fully healthy. Anything's possible. And I like that attitude.
I'm not even sure I agree with myself, which happens far too many times in my life for me to count. But there will be someone out there thinking that. And I'm just wondering how far off or how spot on they might be, really.
I appreciate your attempts to sort of bring some brightness to what has been, like you say, a very gloomy hour. And it's not, let me just make clear, it's not my intention to be really gloomy and negative all of the time. I know that's often the role that I take. And, and somebody already suggested on Twitter whether it is because I'm a Yorkshireman. And maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it is. If anybody who knows the region of Yorkshire will perhaps testify to. But I don't agree with that assertion that if they just get there, then things might be okay, because I just anticipate that they will come up against a team like the Rams and they will get out coached, or they will come up against a player such as an Aaron Rodgers or somebody of that ilk, or Kyler Murray, and the defense won't have the answers, and it will be all on Wilson. And and maybe even if they were able to win one playoff game that way, I'm not sure they'd be able to do it again the following week. And that's really, the route they're going to have to go. You have to win 3 playoff games. And for me, if they were to get to the NFC Championship game, you could turn around and say, that's a progress of a sort. They've not done it in a long time. Fair play. A lot's not gone right this year. You'll take that and see that as a sign of progress. But I don't really have the faith that they're going to do that. I wish I could say that I had. I wish I could, voice the same kind of things that you've just said, both of you, and really think that things could still happen for this team. I think my enthusiasm level and that sort of belief has just wavered too much.
Well, take this into consideration, Rob. The fact that, we have a very tough game against Arizona coming up. But after that, After that, we can start building some momentum. If we start getting, like Adam said, if we can get some guys back and stay healthy, we have the Eagles, who just lost terribly today to the Giants. We lost, or was it that the Giants? I only lost today. And then we have the Giants, then we have the Jets, and then we have the Washington football team. You know, then we finish it off with the Rams or 49ers. We could start building some momentum. Like I think we'll make the playoffs just for the simple fact that we still have to play those 4 teams. And I think we should win all 4 of those games.
Listen, the Giants look good today. Listen, the Giants look well coached. They look organized. People should stop seeing that game as a gimme at the end of the. It's not going to be a gimme. They could be right in the race for the NFC East themselves after winning today. And look, the Eagles are a bit of a shambles themselves. I mean, they're all over the place. You never quite know what you're going to get from them. That's not an easy game. You know, after the Arizona game, to go to Philadelphia and play there. If the Seahawks play the way that they have done in these last 3 or 4 games, that's not going to be a gimme either. I mean, really, you're kind of looking at the Jets yet and Washington. All of the rest of the schedule, even though it's tallied as the easiest remaining schedule in the whole of the league, I'm not sure I can trust the Seahawks to run the table.
Well, I still think we're better than all those teams. That's why I'm saying that. Like, I still think we're a better football team. And I do think that, you know, yeah, the Giants may have looked good today, but again, who did they play? I mean, that's, you know, you can only play who you play. And I heard that many times today by Troy Aikman and whoever said it, Joe Buck. You know, you only can play who you play. But, I mean, that's exactly who they played. Like, they may have looked good against a really bad Eagles team. So, okay, great. Like, but it's not easy to go to Philadelphia and play, you know, and it's probably going to be super cold and probably snowing or whatever. But fact of the matter is I still have trust that we are a better football team than those teams. You know, even if we're not healthy, I still think we can win those games. I'm not saying they're going to be easy, and I'm not predicting blowouts by any means. I'm just saying those 4 teams, that could help us build some momentum going forward. Then we get the Rams again. Hopefully we have built enough momentum that we can start turning around. But even if we lose that game and we won those other 4, then we're sitting at 10-5, and then we have a chance to win against the Niners. So then we're 11-5. So, I mean, we have an opportunity going forward. And I think that, you know, we just getting healthy, like Adam said, which I really appreciate you saying that, getting healthy. And then, you know, I think we're just a better team, you know, with the easy schedule coming up. Hopefully we'll build some momentum.
Adam, I'll give you the final word of the doom hour.
Well, look, I think the ultimate referendum on this team will come when they've played their last game of the season, whenever that is. I don't think any Seahawk fan would have accepted, you know, after the trade for Jamal Adams, you know, looking at the money spent, no one would have accepted not to get into the championship game. And you could honestly say, well, this team's improved, because the way in which they've gone in the last few years has been gradual, kind of one game later into the season improvement. And as you know, obviously we're, you know, projecting what we think might happen. I don't necessarily think this team is built at the moment to get to a championship game. And it's funny that the conversation that we're probably being shouted at by some people for even daring to question the future of some of the coaches, but it'll be the same people that are probably having those question marks if we end up losing in the divisional round again in the playoffs. So I think it's almost a bit of a boring thing to say that you can't really judge until we see where the season ends. But I do think this whole season and the success of it is purely predicated on how the season finishes, because this isn't a time for, you know, next year. This was the year it was really supposed to happen, especially after all the comments, as we said, after the Green Bay game last year. So I can see both sides of it. The beauty of this team is, in the sense, is that they always give you that hope that you're going to win every game at some point. And it's a real kind of, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in thing. You know, they are the ultimate team like that. And so as much as they're just infuriating, the thought of being up till 5 a.m. on Thursday watching them against the Cardinals, I can't think of anything worse. But you know we'll be there because we're mugs, and that's what we're going to do. It's fascinating for a number of ways. And the dust settling on this season, I think, will be one of the more interesting ones that we've seen for the past few years.
Yeah, completely agree there. And I think we've had a conversation today that I think a lot of people will have down the line, and maybe people don't want to listen to it, and I'm sure they'll let us know about that in the comment section. But we've had it, and it's too late now. There's no going back. I just really missed, you know what, there's something in the background again. I'm kind of seeing the reflection of it. They're showing highlights from the Premier League season from 2011, And I just really miss sort of that young, hungry Seahawks team that just had all of that physical energy and intensity and that sort of chip on the shoulder feel that just is missing at the moment. You know, if they're playing badly, but you've still got that belief that they have got that chip on the shoulder and they're out to prove a point, and you can have a bit more faith in them, I think, and that is perhaps the most concerning thing for me, is that there just seems to be a low energy around the Seahawks team. And I never thought I'd say, but it seems to be more energy among teams like the Raiders at the minute and the Dolphins than there are the Seahawks, which is a real shame. But hopefully they can turn it around. I'll be like Adam, watching the game against the Cardinals. If people wonder, you know, if I enjoy watching the Seahawks lose or something, no, I do not want to stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning to watch them get their asses kicked again. I genuinely hope that they win and can turn this around and do what Robbie was saying earlier and win 40-3 or something and stop Kyler Murray and get it back on track. And no doubt we'll be there to talk about it afterwards and before. We'll preview the game before that as well. Hope you'll join us for that. More analysis, go on to SeahawksDraftBlog.com. If you just want to shout at us, you can do that as well. There's a lot of people already joining in there. And we'll see you next time.